What changes it is really creating cultures around giving, seeking, and receiving feedback and doing it on a regular basis. I always feel like the performance review should be the dullest, most anticlimactic conversation you have all year, because you're really just encapsulating everything that you've already discussed. It's when it's not dull that it gets painful.
Don't conduct your analysis in isolation, because data is so incredibly powerful.
Not defending just the tribe, but defending the organization.
Those creative people that you really want to keep empowered, keep excited, keep motivated, keep thinking.
A good experience pays dividends down the line.
Stereotypes tend to break down in proximity.
Welcome to We're Only Human, a podcast about human resources, business, technology, and the workplace. My name is Ben Eubanks, your host, and I'm so glad you're here.
Hey everyone, welcome to the session of the day. We're so glad you're here with us, and we're really looking forward to diving into some of the key things that we're seeing across the landscape, like employee engagement, performance, recognition, some of those big things we're going to talk through with our amazing panel here today. So I have here with me Dana Ullom-Vucelich. She's the CHRO for Ohio Living. And I also have my good friend, Broc Edwards, who is the Director of Learning and Leadership from Baylor University. So Broc, Dana, glad both of you are here and excited to dive into some good stuff. Before we get into some of the things, Dana, would you take just a minute, tell the audience more about who you are and what you do, and then I'll pass it over to Broc so they can get a little bit of a feel for who they're listening to before we dive in.
Sure. Dana Ullom-Vucelich. I've served Ohio Living going on my 24th year. We're in the aging services business. We follow the full continuum of care from independent living to assisted living, memory care, externally palliative medicine, home health, hospice, and we serve over 70,000 Ohioans, and we have 2,500 amazing employees.
Awesome. Wonderful. Broc?
All right. I'm Director of Learning and Leadership at Baylor University, so really oversee the professional leadership development of primarily staff here.
You made that so short and so sweet, Broc. Like, why learning development of all the things you could do?
It's my favorite thing to do. Actually, I just love human potential is fascinating. I love seeing the light bulbs go off. I love seeing people connect with how they can be more successful, however they define success, whatever it is in their world that they're trying to do. How can we help them do it even better? And I don't know, that's a fun space to be in.
It absolutely is. Yes. You and I share a love of like ultra sports and things like that. And so we always look at that. What's the edge of human potential and what's possible? So I'm training for a big race like that right now. So it's top of mind for me these days. All right. Let's dive into this good stuff. I know the audience is excited to hear from both of you. So Dana, I'm going to throw this first question at you just to get us started. One of the things that we're going to cover in our research a little bit later today is some of the things that we're seeing, how companies are trying to approach performance, how they're trying to enable and support performance for their people. But one of the things that most of us probably could agree on is that in general, it's mostly a hated process in a lot of companies and how it's approached. And I'd love to hear from you. Why do you think that is? What's driving that?
I have to tell you, myself, in the multiple decades I've been in human resources, I have poked and prodded all things performance management more than I've poked any other part of my business. And it's because, I guess to your point, nobody likes it. And even though I've written a host of them myself, I still don't like it. I still don't like doing them. And when I sit with my team, even my highest performers, there's always something that I walk away going, eh. And so we have tweaked it in our organization to be more conversational, more prompts to build relationship. And I think that when you think that you're doing it at someone, you don't like it. But if you can create a way to do it with someone and building the relationship and moving in that direction, then I think we turn it just a little bit.
I was speaking the other day to a group of HR leaders, and I said, one of the things that I learned when talking about us working with managers, because we always often talk about the challenges there, so often it's like this, I want this, they say that they're not getting that. And I know a gentleman who's a marriage counselor. He said, listen, relationships change, whether it's at home, at work, when we stop fighting against each other and start fighting together for something we believe in. So what I took from your share there, like one of the key things is we've got to go together and try to figure out how to solve this thing instead of saying, let me tell you the things that you aren't very good at, Dana. I want to list these things out. You got a few minutes because it's going to take a while. Okay. That's a different approach there.
Because the truth is, all of us can list all the things that aren't good about us on our own without a great deal of assistance.
Yes. No support needed there, actually. So, Broc, if that's true, I think, I believe in what Dana's sharing here. If that's the case, what's it going to take for us to change this? How are we going to get that sort of turned around?
And so we've got this weird paradox here, don't we? And we have this paradox for everyone. So we've got employees. As employees, I think all of us want to be successful, right? We all want to know when we're on track. We don't want to be off track. We don't want to be doing work that doesn't matter, that no one cares about. We want to celebrate our success. We want to get even better in the future. So we want all that, but we don't like feedback. I want all that. And yet when someone says, hey, Broc, one of my client groups had some feedback for you, I'm like, and even when it's good, we get that clinch. And managers, they want their employees to be great. And yet many of them are not good at giving feedback. And by the way, their employees probably aren't good at receiving the feedback. And they're often having to deliver feedback that they should have given before. And most people don't like delivering bad news. And then from the HR perspective, we've got this process that we spend a tremendous amount of time rolling out to everyone that it turns out no one wants to do. And they're not happy about having to do it. So we've got this weird thing where there's some great benefits, and yet all of us on some level oppose it. There's goodness that can come out, but it's really not surprising that the average person isn't a super fan of this process. And Ben, that was a long way for me to get to your question here, but what changes it is really creating cultures around giving, seeking, and receiving feedback, and doing it on a regular basis. I always feel like the performance review should be the dullest, most anticlimactic conversation you have all year, because you're really just encapsulating everything that you've already discussed. It's when it's not dull that it gets painful. And so what can we do to change that? From HR perspective, strongly encourage weekly one-on-one meetings where feedback is given, performance is discussed, wins are celebrated. Simplify the processes. It's funny how often we expect people to be highly proficient at a process they do once a year. And if we want people to do something, I was told once, we need to make it as easy as possible for them to do. And so where we can't simplify, we need to increase communication and service to make it easier to understand the whys and the hows to do it. I don't know. Dana, what's your take on that?
Yeah, Broc, I was smiling when you said it should be the most anticlimactic conversation. And what an aim, what a personal aim. And if other people want to share that, then what are the steps that they're going to do to make it happen? I like how you said weekly. One of the things inside our organization, job-focused development plans, it sounds more formal than what it is, but it's just what I was saying. It's our values and it's prompted questions about building the relationship. But I can tell you, even in these very well-intentioned people who work inside the not-for-profit arena with me, they're like, quarterly, Dana, who has time for that? Don't you know we're like running a business, we're taking care of people? Yeah, we don't have time. And I think they're creating their own anxiety. And I like how you said that. I think our challenge is, how are we trying to take the sting out of it? How are we trying to create the impact and just the conversational piece? And so one of the things I even did was say, okay, can I give you like a little prompted question? And you walk out on the floor and maybe you pull an aide or a nurse aside and you're like, oh man, I was standing over there. One of the things you were doing today, I just got so ramped about. I saw you with this connection, this interaction, more of that. And hey, I know this has been a challenge for you. How do I help come alongside of you in this other area? So it's like a check and a challenge and a feel good, a sincere feel good. And I think that's what recognition should be. It's just the complement of the person and what they're doing to bring value towards that directed engagement. We all want happy people at work. We want engaged people at work, but we need directed engagement to get back to our organizational needs.
Yes.
So yeah, thanks for the prompt.
Wonderful. Yeah, I'm thinking we don't want someone whistling through the hallways happy that's not doing their actual work and getting the things accomplished, right? There's still, in your case, there's patients to serve. In Broc's case, there's people to teach, there's people to instruct, there's students to support, right? In the university context. So all of us have an outcome we're trying to shoot for there. I'm so glad you tied, at the very end there, Dana, you tied recognition back into that, because one of the big things we're going to release in the data in just a little while is when we ask employers, what are you doing within your performance practice? What pieces of that really matter? The number one way that they're influencing performance and weaving that back together is by recognizing good work. They're using recognition as a tool instead of saying, let me list the things that you're not good at, or let me point out those challenges. Hey, 6 months ago, you did this wrong. You've probably done it wrong every time since then, but I haven't told you about it yet. Like all those kind of things that we know are silly to say that out loud, and yet we know it's probably happening somewhere today in some organization out there. And so companies that are leaning into this are saying, hey, the number one thing we're doing is recognition. We're really looking at something that Broc said earlier, not just how to help you fill up your gaps from yesterday, but how to help you be better tomorrow than you were today. I'd love to hear from you, Dana. Anything else you want to share there on recognition and how that ties into the performance piece?
A prompt that you got me to is the same thing. And my undergrad is in child development and gerontology, easy for me to say. But in child development, some of the more current research talks about if you have a kid who's getting grades, say all A's, And then you're like, oh, but look at this C in math. And you give every ounce of energy to attacking that C and what they could do to get better and not have that C. Instead, you're missing out on where they're thriving and contributing at the highest value, and probably where their career objectives are lined up. Is if we could look at that in our workplace and say, who's thriving in what space versus the square peg in the round hole, but managing to the uniqueness of the one as it relates to trying to go back to our business outcomes. So I don't know if I answered your question, but you got me all excited about thinking how to make it relevant and maybe change our thinking versus coming up with a one size fits all.
Yes. One size fits one. That's what we found. Probably most of our HR practices. It's really hard to build something for everybody because everyone's so unique there. Broc, anything that you want to add in on the recognition side before we talk about broader engagement?
I love that piece about the making it relevant to them. So thank you for that, Dana. I think that's one of the problems is when it's not tied to anything, when it's done as a checkbox program and it's done, at the organization level versus at the department manager level. Not saying it shouldn't be done at the organization level, but someone 12 levels above me saying, hey, thank you to everyone in the company, that doesn't hit quite as hard as my manager pulling me aside and say, hey, I really appreciate your effort on this piece here. I recall years ago, so I'm doing some work with a manufacturing big corporation, and they did a little simple reward anytime they hit their numbers, like the team got a little pizza party. But the impact of it was in the break room, from the employee's point of view, every now and then some pizza would show up. They never knew what it was for or why they were getting it, but they got free pizza. So yay us. It was such a good attempt that missed the mark so much. And I think so often we do that because we remove it from that human level, that where it really makes an impact.
I don't think it's a bad thing, as you're saying. You didn't say this either, but I don't think it's a bad thing. Don't hear this anyone out there listening right now, for your leadership to say, hey, listen, the team came together. You really pulled it out. You made this happen. And we hit our deadline. Great job as a team. But that shouldn't be the only thing that happens. It needs to filter down to, Broc, on this, we would not have hit this deadline if you had not done this thing. And I appreciate you for working extra that Thursday because I know that it was a long week for you, but you made it happen. Thank you so much. Like being able to go back and filter that down to the individuals. The thing I do like about those leaders doing that is it's the reminder, it's the indicator, it's the sort of cue for everybody else to say, oh yeah, I need to continue flowing this down to the people who made this happen, instead of just letting that substitute for whatever personal interaction there is, because pizza showing up in the break room is a great visual example of, I don't know what it is, but I'm hungry. So yay, without knowing the significance. Like the leadership probably thought, oh, this is going to motivate them. They're like, I'm just not hungry anymore. That's the only thing that really checked off for us. Good one. Broc, I want to come back to you for this one, actually, because I think I know your work involves, you mentioned leadership development at the beginning, learning is a focus for you, something that you care deeply about. How does learning fit into this bigger conversation about performance at work? I know you gave us a clue on that, like help you perform better, but is there a way that we should be thinking about coupling those things together or more tightly integrating learning when we're talking to someone, whether in an individual one-to-one context or more broadly as HR leaders listening in here?
Yeah, let me back up a little bit here, Ben. I want to share just a couple of philosophies that for me, drive this. I feel like our role in learning in all of HR really is to help people make better decisions so they can take better actions and get better results. I wish I invented that. I think a global VP at Pepsi said something to that effect in an HR magazine a decade plus ago, but it stuck with me. And so I try and look at everything through that lens. And in doing so, and this kind of touches on some of the other things we were talking about before, I want to make everything Amazon one-click simple with service levels of Nordstrom. And that is aspirational, but there is nothing easier than buying something from Amazon. And so we do it. They make it easy, so it's super easy to do. In fact, you almost have to resist doing it. And then Nordstrom, I don't know where they are now, but a few years ago, they were the pinnacle of customer service. So I always try and look at things through a customer service lens. And so when we talk about learning, two key philosophies for me is, one, you cannot improve organizational performance until you improve individual performance. Cannot do it. We tried to find all sorts of ways to avoid that, but that's the case. Until individuals get better, the teams don't get better. When teams get better, departments get better, and it cascades. And the only purpose of learning, from my perspective, is to increase performance. That's it. And so now that's not learning in general. There's a lot of great reasons to learn. But when we think about it from an organizational perspective, the things that we're investing in need to be increasing performance, or at least intending to increase performance. I know sometimes measuring that's a little sketchy sometimes, but that should be the intention. And I even think about that from a compliance perspective, where compliance training and learning may not improve performance, but it prevents us from decreasing it by not doing those things that would lead to decreased performance. So we are providing the knowledge and the decisions and the actions. And learning takes many forms. I'm a learning guy, but it doesn't have to be about the L&D team or HR. Conferences, self-learning from books, blogs, YouTube. I think most importantly, when we think about it's learning on the job from the manager and from peers and challenging assignments and stretching skills in a supported way. In my perspective, it's really the manager caring about the employee's career and helping create that future success. Now, I'll also add that not every case of poor performance has to do with learning. I think learning is important to performance. Learning won't fix a lot of things. And we often see that managers want to use classes or training as a bandage for disengagement or other symptoms of poor management. And learning will not fix that at all. When people come to me about, hey, we need to get this employee in a class, I usually have a lot of questions before we even talk about the class. And because there's a lot that could be getting in the way. It's most people as adults, you manage to get your pants on, you manage to get to work in the morning. And if you're working from home, you may have only did one of those things. I don't know. You're at work, you're showing up. Most of life experience tells you what you need to know and what you need to do. Barring some very technical things, most people probably know what they need to do. It's just they don't always do it. So learning can help us find better ways to implement that knowledge that we already have. But it's not always just new knowledge that's keeping people from doing what needs to get done. I don't know. I felt like I was rambling on there a little bit. Dana, what's your take on that?
What you got me thinking about is back to what the root is. I love how you challenge people who want to push towards education, because sometimes for us as leaders, right, it's the easier path. If I have to look you in the eye and say, I think we actually have an attitudinal issue versus a learning gap. If I have to rise as the leader to call that out or to say, why do you think, if I'm observing this, do you agree or do you disagree? And how can we tackle what it really is? Or if you are feeling disengaged, may I understand better? And then create my own vulnerability. Is there something that I'm doing or saying or getting in your way? Or have I not held other people accountable that you're working alongside? And so I think in hearing what you said, it made me be mindful of getting deeper into going back to managing to the one. I can't wait to see the rest of your research, Ben. What has you most excited about what's coming?
One of the things that stood out for performance and that connection on learning was coaching for development was a big part of that. You know, it still was in the top 5 this time around. It was. So what's fun for me is we measured this 7 years ago. And I'm curious because all the conversations then were like, it was the first time people were like really saying, let's get away from once a year and go to multiple sessions. And that trend really started 7 to 10 years ago. And so I was curious to see how things were going to change. We saw that absolutely come out where more companies said just that once a year thing is not as big of a priority. These other things, more frequent, more common interactions. Forgive me, one of you a minute ago mentioned like one-to-ones, like those kinds of things came out as a higher priority for companies because they've realized, listen, behavior change is hard. Getting someone to do something they don't want to do, getting someone to do something different than what they've done in the past, those are the hardest things that we have to do as HR leaders. Broc, I knew you'd appreciate this. One of my good friends, Ben Eubanks, he's been on HR Summer School with us in the past. He's the head of learning at Delta Dental. And one of his sayings that has stuck with me is, everyone says you can lead a horse to water, but can you make it drink? He says, I'm going to figure out how to make the horse thirsty first. And I think that's a great connection here. Like on the learning side, like I can just give you learning and you're going to like it. Or I can make you want to participate. I can make you excited. Hey, here's the vision of what you could be, and here's what's going to take to get there. I'm not pointing out your gaps and your flaws and your problems, but we see you being successful, but you're going to need these tools in your belt in order to get there. And that's what I was hearing from you, Broc. You're talking about those things. Like this is very forward-looking, very forward-focused. I think that's the big transition that we saw. One of the questions we asked in the research, is your approach to performance backward-looking or is it forward-facing? Which one is it? And so I love saying the rearview mirror is smaller than the windshield for a reason. Let's spend less time looking back and more time looking forward at how to help Dana be better, help Ben be better, help Broc be better tomorrow. And that's coaching. That's recognition. It's all these little things that we tie in together. Awesome. Dana, I want to come back to you and ask a question. What do you or what does your team do? What do your managers do? You can pick your lens there. What do you think helps some of the best performers on your team do their great work day in, day out consistently?
I think the connection to what matters And for example, we always have our values weaving through everything that we do. We have 7 core values at Ohio Living. When you're a new employee, you're learning about who we are and what we're aspiring you to share in our value system. Then at your performance appraisal, you're actually evaluated. Everyone, including the CEO of the company, is evaluated against those values. If you're a manager and above, you're also evaluated against specific performance outcomes, but it's a 50-50 kind of split. And so for me, just weaving in and why does it matter? And so even in the way we practice thanking people, Ben, I want to thank you for setting up this meeting today. You were organized. I felt more prepared. I felt able to deliver on the things that were important and have a good teaching experience for the group that was there. And so at the end of it, you'd be like, I know exactly why Dana appreciated what I did, because I did this, or a timeout. I sought to see if this was a convenient time. And Broc and Dana had some comfort level meeting each other for a few minutes ahead of time, all those kinds of things that were important to me. So now you know what you did. I've tied it back. Why is it important? Why does it matter? And how do I show appreciation? So we literally practice the thanks, and then we try to build the thanks into recognition. So it's shared, but then into the evaluation. So it's repeated and practiced.
I love that example. And thank you for the kind words, by the way. I've worked hard on it. Broc, that brings it up because you talked about practice. And as someone who focuses on leadership development better than anyone, that it's not as simple as, here's your slide deck, you're a great leader, go be great. There's a lot of practice involved. There's a lot of getting those skills built. So would you talk for a minute about some of the key skills that when you and the Baylor University team are thinking about a great leader, what are some of the skills that stand out as they've got to have these things in order to excel and perform here? And then how do we actually develop those in people? Because it's not as simple as telling them what they are. There's some other pieces involved in actually getting there. And that's what you do every day. So I know we could spend a lot of time on it, but share with us what you can there, because I think that's important.
Yeah, and I mentioned a little bit before, one of the big things that comes to mind is really around feedback. Can you give it? Can you receive it? Is it supported on your team? Like, do peers give each other feedback on your team? Do your employees give you feedback as a leader in there? And so often, even just teaching them a feedback model, just being able to say, because feedback is often glossed over. It's high level. Hey, great job. Thumbs up. Fantastic. I love it when people tell me that, but I really don't know what I did. As Dana was saying, if you want me to do it again, it's helpful if you say, here's what you did that I thought was fantastic. If you don't want me to do it, telling me, Broc, you really screwed up there. Okay, doesn't help me. What did I mess up? And more importantly, what would you want me to do in the future? So what's the behavior? What's the impact? I think so often people don't even know the impact of their behavior. And then what would you need me to do in the future? And focused on what you need me to do versus what you don't want me to do. Because there's a billion things you don't want me to do. There's only a couple things you really want me to do. So direct me down that path. And so if we can get managers doing even that piece, those regular conversations, so people know when they're on track, off track, and a very human conversation around it. It's not something we're sending via email. That there should be some sort of dialogue there, a chance for questions, a chance for feedback. There's a lot of skills out there that make great leaders, but just if we can start there, that's fantastic.
I thought about the Crucial Conversations book and about when we could get off track. If there's a chance that I could get off track and all of a sudden you feel disrespected and disenfranchised and whatever, the most important thing I can come as a supervisor prepared, knowing I'm the one in the room who has more power. How can I bring the conversation back to respect? Because once you feel disrespected, now the new conversation is not about my performance appraisal. It's about the disrespect or the disenfranchisement I feel. And so how can we strengthen? How can we be our best to say, this is at the end of the day, I want this person walking out of this room going, yay, Ohio Living, yay, Dana, yay, my skill set. I got more in me and I'm ready to go. You can get fired up, Broc. Take it.
Yeah. I think two things that leaders always need to communicate is vision and optimism. And whether we're talking about the corporate level, the organization level, or even the individual level, some of my best leaders saw more in me than I saw in myself. And they were able to communicate that to me. And that optimism, where even if we're not there, even if we're facing challenges, I know we can get you there. I know that we can get there as a team. Just no one wants to follow Eeyore. We want to do good work and we want to know that it matters. You never see a leader pull the team together and say, team, this is going to take some late nights, a lot of hard work. And in the end, no one's going to care. So give it your best, right? That doesn't work. We've got it. I think people want to do good work, and they want to know that their work has impact.
Yes.
And we don't always see the connection. I think good leaders are able to make those connections for people and acknowledge the hardship, and never saying blind optimism, but acknowledge the hardships in a way that we know we can get there. We'll figure it out. And
I've appreciated the balance for the things you've shared, Broc, between the leadership, the highest levels of leadership in the organization. These things do matter still, but it's a little different context, but it still applies at that personal level. One of the ways I've put that in the last year or so is everybody talks about things like workplace flexibility, or they talk about inclusion is important to us as a company. That's a soundbite from a leadership snippet. That's a whatever. It actually works or doesn't work at that personal level with a supervisor that you have. If they're like, oh yes, flexibility is important. As long as you're here at 7 a.m., that's all that matters. But flexibility is totally good with me. Or inclusion is great, but we're not going to hire that kind of person because they make me feel a little bit uncomfortable. So it matters at that level, and it's a relationship at that point. It's not just a policy. It's not just a decision. This is how we interact with each other as humans. And if you're working, using these things, using the tools that Dana's talking about here on how to recognize someone with real care and authenticity and seeing them for who they are. And Broc sharing about, and I believe that with these things together, tomorrow you're going to be even more amazing than you are today. You're great, but you're going to be even greater. Like those two things paired together, it's just an incredible place to be. I want to spend the next 45 minutes asking y'all more and more questions, but I know we're going to transition on to our next session shortly. Thank you so much to both of you. I'm going to make sure and get your links to your LinkedIn profiles here into the chat so the audience can reach out and connect with you. They're right there. Make sure you just say, hey, saw you on the session, saw you share about employee engagement and feedback and whatever you want to say in there, but don't just blindly hit connect. They want to know who you are. So let them know. Dana, thank you, my friend. I appreciate you so much for joining us.
Welcome. Thank you.
Broc, you're a great man. Thankful to know you and appreciate you for spending some time with us today.
Great to be here. I love this conversation.
Thank you so much for joining me on the show today. I'm honored to have you as a listener. If you enjoyed this episode, please take 10 seconds to rate it at iTunes, Stitcher, or wherever you listen to your podcast. Also, if you know a friend that could benefit from today's conversation, please pass it their way. After all, a rising tide lifts all ships. To see show notes, sponsor information, and our full show archives, visit onlyhumanshow.com.